Welcome to This Sustainable Life, Biodiversity and Conservation. This is Michelle Watson. Today's guest is Sheillah Munsabe. I met Sheillah through Tony Frost, my second guest in this podcast. Tony has been her mentor during her studies at the African Leadership University. Sheillah is now a first-class graduate from the university, having focused on business innovation in the conservation sector. So far, she has worked in international conservation organizations such as the International Gorilla Conservation Programme, Earthmind UK, and Singita Investment Company. Currently, she's working on piloting and developing her own initiative called She for Nature, which aims at being a global conservation education and leadership platform for young women and girls who are also passionate about the conservation field. A wonderful role model for young women working in the environmental sector, Sheillah loves to paint and indulge in landscape photography when she's not busy helping the environment. Hi Sheillah, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good. I'm very curious and interested to hear more about your life with conservation. And as I mentioned in an intro, you have a very impressive CV. And what I wanted for you to start off maybe with sharing with our listeners is your story, how you got into the conservation from, you told me it was an outing, a Sunday school outing. So if you could just share that story with everyone.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about my conservation journey and how far I've gone and how it is started. My conservation journey started back then when I was still young. I cannot recall the age, but I know I was very young, like below 10 years. And that time I was part of like a Sunday school where children are taken to learn how to pray and also like to know God, to read the Bible and all that. So there came a time where we were taken out for a picnic, and that was in Uganda. Yeah, I was raised in Uganda. I stayed there for quite some good time before I came to Rwanda. And so we went for a picnic to a place called Katatumba Resort in Uganda. Mm-hmm. It's a zoo, and that's the first time I got to see a lion. As children back then, all those things, you normally see them in cartoons, like, you know, wildlife used to be like in cartoons or movies. But it was my first time like to see a lion face to face. But in the movies or the cartoons that I used to watch, they would be in the jungle running, you know, have like with the freedom, like living and all that. But here what I saw was the lion was in a cage, and it was the only lion in that zoo. So I was a kid, so I really didn't understand it quite well, but I was like, maybe this is the other different kind of the reality from the things I watch in the cartoons or the children movies. Mm-hmm. And yes, so but then as I grew up, especially during my secondary level of education, I got to learn and to know more about like the environment, wildlife and all that. And that's where like I now could relate my story of childhood and then connected to now understanding like exactly the environmental field. And that's where like I started off with like joining environmental clubs and participating in environmental activities like tree planting, like you know, doing some community work. And I would like to say that up to now in most African families like going out, like visiting wildlife or touring or safaris are still considered as a luxury. Yes. So that's I think that was my trip to the zoo was my first, and I think it's up to now I haven't gotten another trip to like specifically a safari or touristic national park with wildlife and all that. And due to the mindset, because not only the mindset of people, me, I'll be free and I would love to explore more of the safari or wildlife tourism. But that comes into the expense too. Like, not only is it a luxury, even in terms of finances, it really, really shows you that this is a luxury that you haven't gotten to. And so my journey to the conservation field started from there. I joined conservation clubs, and until when I got a huge opportunity to join African Leadership University, and I was taken on as a conservation scholar.
Mm-hmm.
And the African Leadership University School of Wildlife Conservation, and it's where like my journey into the conservation field grew much more stronger, and I got to accomplish some of the things and explore the conservation field more than before, because it was an opportunity that provided me the required network into the conservation space. It's an opportunity that provided me with the networking that I required, the experience that I required, the internships that really opened my opportunities into the conservation space. And and from there, I took on a couple of projects because I was really ambitious. Like, I was like, this is something that I want to do. It's not that I'm doing it because it's trending. It's not that I'm doing it because everyone else is doing it, but I really wanted to do it from my childhood stage up to that. It's a field that I really feel I'm connected to. It's part of me. And field that I feel like I'm not doing something only for myself, but I'm doing something that even the future generations will get to benefit from. And that's the motive and something that pushes me each and every day to take on opportunities into the conservation space. So our LU African Leadership University School of Wildlife Conservation gave me that space to grow in the field of environmental conservation. And from there, I took on a couple of personal projects and internships. My first project was into conservation education, and that was I more worked with schools in Kigali.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked with schools in Kigali, and that project like the much focus of it was on conservation education among children in primary schools, and especially in cities, because I got to notice like most of the things like national parks and nature, like much more of the nature activities or environmental activities were mostly done into areas that are maybe, or communities that are maybe surrounded by national parks or protected areas and all that. And I was like, okay, so how do people in cities get this knowledge? Okay, because even in cities there is need of knowledge around nature, because we all live on the same planet. We are all surrounded by nature, and we need to know like how best to live with it, such that the environment and the human society, or nature and the human society, can coexist and thrive at the same time. So I was like, well, and I was like, let me take on this project, and also looked at the fact that in children, like, because in relation to my story, when you're a child and you see something, you much more easier relate to it, and can easily and can easily like take on with it than when you're already grown up. Because children, like, the mindset you grow in a child, it's what builds the child up until until they are grown ups. So I was like, if children know about the environment and how and what and what the environment contributes to their lives, not only looking at nature like, okay, this is a tree, this is an animal. These are just living organisms, like how we used to be taught in primary.
Yes.
Yeah. But if they really understand, okay, these contribute much more than we are taught in school, and understanding like, okay, how best can we live with them, it will be easier for them to take on like activities into the conservation space. And it will also be easier when like the government or the government bodies are putting across like policies or measurements towards environmental sustainability. So I was like, let me take on with this. And so we carried out a 1-year project in a school called St. Vincent in Kigali.
Mm-hmm.
So we worked with that school with their primary. It has both primary and secondary, but then we focused on working with the primary children, and we engaged with them. We into conservation studies, simple things like to understand like, okay, the environment does much more than what we know. And it was quite a good learning experience. The children were asking a lot of questions, and it was really engaging. They really enjoyed it.
Yes.
They really enjoyed it. Yeah. And many of them were motivated like to join the environmental club in their school.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
that's yes. And we closed on the project with a tree planting day, which was done on the World International Day of Forests in March,
Yes.
March 2019. And we planted over 50 trees, if I remember quite very well. And so each child or each student who planted a tree was given that tree as their responsibility to take care of it until it grows. So yeah, so hopefully we look forward to going back to visit and to know the progress of the trees they planted and the lessons they learned and all that. And yeah, so that was one of my first projects that I got to take on. And from there, I as a student who's doing international business, yes, and with a focus on the conservation space, I had to find innovative ideas that are environmental friendly into the business world. So that was one of the most challenging, but then an opportunity that gave me more space to learn and to understand more about sustainable businesses. So I took on a couple of learnings, self-learning via Canvas. I covered courses around environmental sustainability, green business strategy, and all that. And during that time, also as I was taking my studies and personal learnings, I tried to look at around my environment or around my community to understand exactly what is really the problem that should be solved, and not only being solved, but like a solution that can benefit both the environment and the people. And that's where I took on a project around sustainable handcraft.
Okay.
That time, yes, that was in 2019 when I was interning with Singita. I was interning with Singita as a community and conservation intern. So I looked around that community, and it's a community of talented people, and it is a touristic area that is in the northern province of Rwanda. Mostly called Musanze, and that's where like the national park is, the Volcanoes National Park. So many tourists come to visit the gorillas and to experience wildlife. So I looked around the community, and it's a community of talented people with skills in handcraft, and also it's a community of people like who have grown with wildlife, especially gorillas, and full of green, like the forest and all that. And so I looked into it and I was like, this would be an opportunity for me to take on. However, but then focus it much more into engaging with women into this area, because it's a fact that there is still a gap in the conservation field. There's still a gender gap. Women are not still much more involved or engaged in the conservation space, in areas of decision making. Not only that, but also in areas of taking on bigger positions in the conservation field, or bigger projects, and all that. And I can give it as a testimony because I got to experience it. My first internship was in Uganda, where I got to intern with the Kibale National Forest Schools program, a program that was in cooperation with the Kibale National Park. So I worked both on community conservation and engagement, and I also took on another task to work with the game rangers in the forest. So I was the only girl on the team. When it came to, I was the only girl on the team because I was very ambitious. So I insisted I wanted to take on that task. So, and it was quite challenging, and but it was a good learning experience. And it's why I noticed, like, they kept on like doubting my abilities to go for tracking chimpanzees, understanding their behaviors and all that. And like it's not only chimpanzees in the forest, there are many more wildlife in the forest. So you might be hurt, you might be this, you're a girl. So they were really concerned, and I was like, I can do this. Yeah. And so I was like, so I not only like are in the areas of doing like conservation ranging work, but also in general, there is still a gap of women engagement in the conservation field. So I engaged with a small number of women. There were 5, and so I started with one she was a young lady almost my age, and she had talent in handcraft, but then she had the problem was like finding the market of a handcraft, and also that was her main problem. But me, I came with more than that. I was like, okay, this is handcraft, but then not only are we going to find the market, but also to make sure it is environmentally friendly. So how do we do that? So we took on that, and 4 more women joined the group. So they were the artisans, and me, my part was like to educate them about the environment and how their products can be more environmental friendly, and also in product design, and also quality, for them to be able to attract the market, like especially like tourists that who mostly buy the handcraft, and also to find more markets that are beyond that. And yeah, so I carried on with that until 2020. And I'm proud to say that it wasn't like my established business, but I took it on like something of my own, because I know I was doing something great for the environment and for those women that I was working with. And at the end of our engagement, or that time working together, they had found a couple of markets, and currently they supply a number of handcraft shops in that area. And yeah, that's when we reached that accomplishment. That's when like I was able to close it on, but we're still in communication, and their businesses are still running.
Excellent.
Their businesses are still running. They're mindful of where they get the the materials. They are mindful of how they use the especially the natural resources around them. And yeah, and I was like, this is nice. I liked it and I loved it. And during that time, in the area of product design and quality, and in the area of focusing on environmental sustainability, I engaged with them in a project to recycle waste. And so we took on our recycling of bottle tops, especially like these tops for sodas, the metallic ones, or beers and all that. So they would design this into different interior decorations, and also like jewelries and all that. And up to now, they still do that recycling project, and they sell the products, and which is a good achievement, because it's contributing to the environment, and also it's improving their livelihoods through provision of income to them. And yeah, so it has been quite a long journey, but an engaging and an interesting one. Not only taking on projects, I've worked with a number of companies, organizations, and my work has been more into community engagement, community conservation education, yes. And it's something that I think I'll keep on doing until I retire. I don't know if I will retire. Yeah, and yes, and yeah, I think that's it. If there is any question around that, I would take it on.
You are
Yeah,
a real excellent role model, and it's really lovely to hear that not only you're doing something that is so positive for the environment and your community, but you're enjoying it. And I think the fact that you enjoy it, people can feel and hear it, and that's a lot more inspiring, obviously, to the people you work with.
Thank you so much. Yes.
No, it's really lovely hearing your story. As I had mentioned to you that we have a little challenge, if you're willing to take it on. So it's absolutely up to you.
Yes.
We would like to invite you to act on the environment, but you personally. And I was thinking, if you just go back to when you told me that story about the Sunday school outing, what did you feel? What were the emotions you had when you saw that lion, and instead of running free and wild, you saw him in a cage?
It was, I was a child and I couldn't understand it. So I asked, why is it in the cage? And they're like, okay, this is the only lion here. And I was like, I couldn't understand it. And so I was like, but I'm not understand, why is it in the cage? And then they're like, or many more animals are normally in the national park, so this is a zoo, that's why it's in the cage. And I was like, okay. So I took it on I took it on like that. But it was really not clear to me. And I was like, in my thinking, I was like, okay, why isn't it free and wild, like how I normally see in cartoons or in movies? And I was like, maybe this is the reality, and what we watch is the different kind of another world. And that's why I was like, okay. So I took it on like that until I grew up and I got to understand much more better around wildlife and the environment. Yes.
Now that you are working with the environment, for the environment, how does it make you feel? Like, what kind of emotion do you have?
Emotion?
And how does it make you feel inside? Like, does it make you feel happy or free, or does it make you feel love or joy? That's what I'm trying to get from you. Like, some people do what they do in life because it makes them feel free. Other people do things in life because they want to feel happy. So
Yeah.
everybody has a different reason inside. So
Mm.
that's what I'm trying to like. I can hear how you feel, but like, if you were to find a word to explain and share with other people what working with the environment, how it makes you feel inside.
How it makes me feel inside. I think it makes me feel happy.
Happy.
And yes, it makes me feel happy knowing that I'm doing something of an impact, positive impact to both the people and the environment. Yeah. I'm doing something that I like
Yes.
and I'm passionate about. Yes.
Just keeping in mind that acting on the environment is something that makes you happy. Is there anything that comes up to mind? Take one new sustainable action in your private life. So it would be something that you do yourself and something you're not doing already. And it can be something small. It's not about saving the whole world or anything. Something that is a SMART goal. SMART goals, it's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So is there anything that you could think of that you could do personally as to take up as a challenge?
Okay.
So this is not a new project. This is just Sheillah Munsabe taking up one new
Yes.
sustainable action in your own private life.
Okay. Yes. I think I'll take on. So there are two most things that challenge me
Yes.
at home, and that is like around energy efficiency
Mm-hmm.
and usage of water.
Okay.
Yes. So I'll be in the shower and I will just splash it and it will keep on like flowing and until I'm done showering, and then I remember this was open throughout my time in the bathroom. I'm like, mm-mm. And the other thing would be like keeping electronics charged over the night, like sometimes leaving like bulbs on. So I think I'll pick up one of those, and I think I'm going with the water one.
Okay.
Yes.
So if we say it, okay, what exactly are you going to do? You're going to make it time, like you make it shorter, or what is your water goal for the shower?
My water goal, not only in the shower, but even around like the house when I open taps. And I don't know, but I have to be mindful of how I use the water.
Okay, but let's just say for this commitment, let's just take one thing, and we put like something that you can measure. So like
I
your
don't know if
shower.
I'm measuring. I have to measure it.
Like say, okay, if normally you take a shower that lasts 15 minutes, maybe now you only take a shower that lasts 10 minutes, or something like that. Because you say you want to be more mindful of your water usage, but if you can make it into a specific measured goal.
Okay. Yes.
So what would yours be?
What would mine be? I'll be okay. So instead of opening the shower
Mm-hmm.
and letting water flow,
Okay.
I would I would be fetching it in a bucket, and I know, okay, this is the water that I have to use,
Okay.
than opening a fresh, which will like flow for more than 15 minutes, and then that's a lot of water being used than needed.
Okay. Wow. And how long are you willing to do the challenge for? Just how long do you think before you can say how it went, and then we can schedule our second conversation where you can tell us all about how showering differently went? So how long would you like to commit for?
A month maybe.
A month? Okay.
Yes.
No, excellent. So from today onwards, you're happy. You are not going to pour the water in the bucket and shower without letting the water flow. Like
Yes.
use like shower from the bucket for 1 month.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I hope there is no cheating, right?
No,
have to be.
this is an
if I cheat, I'll cheat myself.
Exactly. This is supposed to be fun, and it's an experience, right? And in a month's time, you'll tell us and you share with the listeners how it went. And sometimes maybe you forget, and sometimes that's next conversation. We'll have to find out how it actually really happened.
Yes.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yes.
Well, I'm very happy and curious to find out how that goes.
Is it the first one?
No, I'm happy. I like your idea. Some people have cold showers. Everybody chooses something else. So I like your idea very much.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with the listeners? You mentioned the initiative She for Nature.
She for Nature is an initiative different from the handcraft projects that I had with artisans.
Mm-hmm.
I started She for Nature, like I started working towards developing the project and piloting it this year. So as I'd said before, there is still a gender gap of women into the conservation space. And so I looked on to finding a much more bigger project that can engage more women, because not everyone will be interested in doing handcraft work. And again, I believe people have different ideas and things that they would like to do in the environmental space if given an opportunity.
Yes.
And I also believe like there are some role model female out there that young women and girls don't know about, mm-hmm. under whom they would get inspiration from to take on conservation opportunities, and not to think like being maybe a conservation game ranger or being maybe wildlife officer in a certain organization. You have to be male, or you have to have some specific,
yes.
Some specific physical strength and all that to take on that. So I was like, I need to work more with young girls and women who are passionate into the conservation space, or who would also like to understand the environmental and conservation field. And yes, so She for Nature is a new initiative that I'm working on, and I look forward to it being a much more bigger thing, maybe an NGO or social enterprise. And so we started on as an initiative that its focus is in conservation, education, and leadership in mm-hmm. young women and girls. So we look forward for it being a platform. It's a platform that provides young women and girls an opportunity to to share, to learn, and to also raise up, to say out their voice in different conservation aspects in their communities, and an opportunity for them to take on challenges, to take on solutions towards solving specific conservation challenges in their communities. And yeah, so that's what I'm currently working on. And most especially, sorry.
No, I'm just curious, is this your initiative, is it just in Rwanda, or are you doing it also with other countries or online, like with Uganda and Congo for the gorillas, or just general?
No. So it's I haven't yet like piloted it. So the pilot phase would much more focus in firstly in the East African region. So, and as I said, it's not specifically for Rwanda. It's a global platform for young women and girls to learn, to share knowledge, and also to have a space to a space of their voices into the conservation space. And so I don't look at it being specifically for Rwanda, because I want to track a large number of more females out there. And yes, and I'm looking up forward for a bigger achievement of people, of young girls and women that I'll get to engage with during this program. Hopefully before the end of this year, after our first pilot, the minimum I expect to reach out to is 100, but our focus is at least 1,000 young women and girls by 2023. Yes, that's achievable because it's a global online platform. And yes, and also if there are people out there that would like to be part of these experts into the conservation space, especially women, but this is not limited, even male, yes, because I would be looking for experts in the conservation space to share the stories into the environment, in the conservation field, and also like especially women to maybe, and also provide like the tips on how to, like on how to carry out maybe conservation projects. How do you identify a problem into the conservation space? How do you tackle it? If it requires funding, how do you go about that? And also understanding like what are the environmental challenge that we're facing in our communities, because what you're facing in Rwanda might be different from what Congo is facing, but then there's some things that we share in common, of course, like things like climate change, which is all over everywhere. And we're all suffering like from the consequences of it. So there are things that we share in common, and there are things that are exceptional, like I might say, like in the space of wildlife conservation, like when it comes to communities where there are still activities of poaching or wildlife trade. So that's another challenge that can be looked into. But then how can one get into, tackling that problem and solving it? So yes, it's a global online platform for young women and girls, and look forward to reaching a much more bigger number of women and girls out there. And we look forward for mentors, for guest speakers, and funders. And yes.
Well, that sounds so exciting and so promising. I'm definitely a fan of you. And
Thank you.
hope that you'll send me all the links and details if anybody is interested in joining your platform, so I can include those links.
Yes,
and
I'll do.
Yes, I'm also looking forward to hearing from your little shower adventure in a month's time.
Yeah.
And I wish you all the best for all your current programs and your initiative. So thank you very, very much for joining us today, Sheillah. And
thank you so much for inviting me here.
It was my pleasure. So we'll see you in your month. Okay.
Yes.
Take care.
Yes.
Bye.